will people make fun of you? You shouldn't say this because you have these advantages, right? You're wasting your talent. You could be doing more in the corporate world. You could still be earning good money. You're a disappointment to your parents. And it's like, those are just scripts in my head. I was just scared to live my life.
Paul, I'm so excited to have you on this podcast. We're matching. We're wearing the same thing.
This is good.
And we've come a long way since episode 115 when we first recorded. Like, I listened back to that yesterday and I was just in shock because I was like, we've both come so far and also gone nowhere in both.
I like that.
But talk to me about that time and looking back on where we are today and how that's changed you.
So big question. I think one shout out to you with that podcast. I think you were one of the first people that sort of noticed the energy I was putting out there in the world with the Pathless Path. So shout out to you and just your ability to, I think, scour the internet and see sort of emerging energy in the world. You're very good at that.
Thank you.
At that time, I was living in Taiwan. I was 5 months into writing my book. I was at the point where I sort of felt it was a bigger project. I thought I would ship it in 3 months and then 5 months. So I kept pushing out the timeline. I think I pushed it to September at that point. I eventually launched it 13 months later, not 3, 6, or 9 months later. But I was feeling great about life. I was living in Taiwan. We rented an apartment in Taipei for 3 months. I was studying Chinese full-time at a university, biking to class every day, coming home, writing, also experimenting with some online workshops I was running with my Strategy U business. And I was what other people would see as busy, but I was feeling alive and super energized. And it was really cool to listen back at the time because I noticed a hesitancy in myself. You said you listened back to the same episode and you didn't notice it as much, but I was more passive and just responding, I think. As opposed to now, I feel more confident about my message because the book enabled me to realize this shit matters and I shouldn't be shy about saying that and believing that.
100%. And what's so cool is noticing your increased confidence in yourself and your message and how that's led you to publish it more broadly. It's so exciting for me because I knew you had it back then. And now it seems like you feel the same way about yourself. And that's so exciting. You've gone now from when we recorded that episode, the Pathless Path was an idea and something that you were taking the first steps towards. Now it's a published book, a self-published book, which we'll get into. And it's also sold 12,000 copies over how long?
They're a little over 12 months.
A little over 12 months. So in 12 months, you've sold over 12,000 copies. How does that sound? Like hearing that out.
It's crazy. I think going back to your original question. So what I was trying to do on my own is essentially just follow my own curiosity and find work that mattered to me. And what I mean about not being confident about my path is I did not know if I would ever be able to sort of make a living from what I do. Now, I'm still unsure if I can make a living, it's like forever from what I do, but it seems more possible now. The thing is, I didn't care. And that's where the confidence comes from. I had found work that mattered to me in a way of orienting towards life, which felt true and sustainable in terms of being the person I wanted to show up as in the world. And that gave me such confidence and courage to keep going. Now, what I've experienced in the past year is just sort of mind-blowing. I'm laughing a lot because I haven't changed much. The external perception of what I'm up to has changed. People see me as an author now. People see me doing all these things. But to me, the book is just like a PDF of a bunch of words I've written. I've written tons of words over the last 7 years. So yeah, it just kind of cracks me up that this is even possible. I feel so lucky that I'm able to live this life.
Why do you think the perception of somebody is different? The perception of somebody is different when they're a published author versus when they're a blogger or a newsletter writer.
I think in the worlds we operate in, a great essay written online gains a lot of respect and status and prestige. But that's a small part of the world still. There are tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people over the age of 60. Books still matter to those people, and to many people in the world. A book is still a sort of hard thing to do. There's always these threads and people writing, there's so many books in the world. There's still not that many books in the world. Why shouldn't everyone write a book about their journey? That would be amazing. You could then go and learn more about people, learn more about people's paths and stories. The best stories in the world have probably never been put in a book.
You have this spirit inside of you that is like, I want to help other people create and put their own story out there. Where does that come from?
I'm not sure. I think it starts with just my parents giving me the space to be me. My mother was incredible. She just always believed in me, supported me, did whatever I needed to sort of support my success in life. Now, her version of success was like do well in school and make a lot of money. But that foundation, and I write this in the intro of my book, gave me the foundation to dream and explore beyond what my parents had the opportunity to do. So I think a lot of it comes from that. And I've always had this optimistic sort of possibility mindset. I almost lost it in the corporate world. My quitting my job was really just an attempt to rediscover and save that. So I think it comes from that. I remember when I started my podcast, I had this floating around idea right when I launched my website, think-boundless.com, and a podcast called Boundless. I just had this thought of I'd be meeting these people, hearing their stories. I was starting to meet more creators, more entrepreneurs, and I just wanted to tell the world about them. I think you have a similar impulse. And that was the origin of my podcast and writing, is I just want to highlight really cool people. And I think it's still something people don't do enough of, believing in others. I think you've talked a lot about your mother. Your mother and your grandmother listens to all your podcast episodes, and that's so cool. Hi, Danny's grandmother, if you're listening. That's so amazing because that matters so much. I've been the recipient of that. Surprisingly, not that many people when I started my path actively supported me. And I think this is something that is broken in society right now, which is you can get implicit support if you buy into the default path. If you buy into the default path through employment, you get this implicit approval, right? But when you walk away from that, that falls away. Most people assume you're supported because most people are on the default path. But you desperately need those people that believe in you, right? And in today's world, more people are actually off the default path, even if they're employed. Because the world is so chaotic, jobs are so atomized now, jobs are so specialized, there's no guaranteed paths anymore. So people need more support than ever. And I think this matters, it's important, and we need to be screaming from the rooftops for it. Because if I, random person on the internet, can give a random stranger confidence that they are capable of things, that's crazy. Like, where are the people in that person's life? And this is the spirit that I think is injected in my writing and my book, because I talk to so many people and they're inspired by me. And that's cool, but it's also like, what the hell, people in this person's life? Why aren't other people rooting for this person?
Yeah, it's also something I'm so happy you brought up and mentioned, because when you have it, it seems like you extrapolate that to other people. Oh, of course their mom is going to listen to the podcast. Oh, of course your grandma really cares. But like, that is not the reality for 99% of people when they do something that's quote unquote not normal. And I'm really happy you're there as a support system for people and to push people and be like, yo, I believe in you. I appreciate you. I think you have the potential to do great work. One question I have on that is like, what is great work? Like, how do you spot potential? How do you spot people who are doing awesome things? And how do you know that this is somebody you should support?
I think people are really easy to root for. And a lot of people don't do it because they get triggered by what looks like bad work. Right? And the key is you're not rooting for the work, you're rooting for the person. Most people are easy to root for. You just need to pay attention, ask questions. This is the core of what you do on your podcast. It's so easy. And this is one of the coolest things of hosting a podcast. You start to realize how cool most people are.
Yes.
Dig deep with a few questions and you find stuff that lights people up. Most people have this. Some people, unfortunately, in today's world don't have it, but most people do. Right? So find those things that they're fired up for and encourage it. Right? So one lesson I learned in managing people from my past career in consulting was to not correct mistakes. I learned this at McKinsey, which has an amazing culture that really drives toward great work. Nobody ever would correct my mistakes. We overcame it by iterating fast. So we'd go back and forth on PowerPoints. It's not the most interesting work, but when you're going back and forth over and over again, people wouldn't point out mistakes. They'd say, hey, this could be better, and here's another version of it I came up with. What do you think? Right? It's encouraging you to come to a higher level rather than saying this is not good. What happens in most companies, most schools, and most environments is people point out what's wrong with things. And that is so easy. That's so boring. It's so easy. Who the hell cares what mistakes people are making? Right? I still make spelling mistakes in my newsletters. Maybe I am a bit like, maybe it's a lack of care, but sometimes I'm thinking, oh, maybe that will give somebody early on confidence. Right? And the lawyers will unsubscribe from my newsletter because it so triggers them.
What does boundless mean?
There's not much thinking behind it. Behind it just felt good.
It felt good.
I tested it with my friend Greg in 2017, and I said, thinking of launching a site called Boundless. It's like, yeah, that sounds good. I think it's just possibility. Also, I didn't want to constrain myself to a topic. I'm not a big niche person. Maybe I have a niche of unconventional past or whatever, but I just want to write about whatever. So I think part of branding your stuff online is not creating artificial constraints you don't want. Right? So I think naming things at the beginning like Boundless just gives you a lot of freedom to explore different things.
Yeah. That's why I named this podcast my own name, because I knew I wanted to explore. I had no idea what I wanted to be, or I let the path show what I should be. But back to you. Who were Stephen Worley and Nita Baum?
Yeah, so they were two of the first friends I made after I left my job. So at a conference in New York, September 2017, and a bunch of things happened at that conference. This was about 3 to 4 months after leaving my job. Now, none of what I'm doing right now was in my plans or in my mind at that moment. 4 months after quitting my job, I was just trying to make it as a freelancer. I had one client paying me about $10,000 a month on a project I loved, and I had enough space and freedom that I was starting to dream, starting to lean into, oh, wow, this is a really interesting life. But I felt very alone. I did not have people actively supporting me. It was very quiet. Like there weren't people cheering me on. I think my Aunt Debbie was probably the one who would reach out and actively send me stuff. But most people were projecting their fears onto my path. Don't you worry about this. Aren't you? You're not making money. What's your plan? What are you going to? I was very stressed about those things. I didn't need to be reminded. But yeah, I went to this conference. It was a future of work conference in New York. And my big grand dreams were I'm going to make it as a future of work consultant. I'm going to help companies adapt to the future, become more human. I've since sort of given up on that, though I'm still working with companies in my own way. But yeah, I don't really want to work as a consultant. I don't have much hope for big companies, especially maybe small companies, but went to this conference and I think I'll make connections. Maybe I'll find some consulting clients. What I found was friends. So I hung out the first night late. I'm just standing around. And suddenly this woman, Nita Baum, starts speaking. And it was as if she had the language I was looking for and had already lived out the path I was going to follow. And it was amazing. And I was just like, who is this human? And I'm going to send this now to Nita. So hi, Nita. Thank you for listening. But yeah, it was just so amazing to hear from someone like her that saw the world in a similar way and had done all these unconventional things and was showing up with a lot of presence and power. She was doing some of these breakout sessions and mindfulness stuff in a corporate, corporate conference type thing. And yeah, it was just reassuring. She connected me with Steven, who took a path ahead of me. He had this podcast called Unstuckable that was very successful for a while, Life Skills That Mattered. He's now living off the grid in the woods in Western Mass and really just reconnecting with himself. So he's been on a similar journey as well. He actually took over my lease when I moved to Asia in Boston. And he kind of like took all my stuff and took over my life and some of my friends. So yeah, that was amazing. And the other person I met at that conference was Kehi.
Wow.
He was sitting in a chair interviewing CEOs as part of this. Like, he was doing something with Quartz at the time and interviewing people. I couldn't understand was he working in the corporate world? Did he have a job? Was he a freelancer? And then I found his podcast, and that podcast helped introduce me to a whole bunch of other people that unlocked so many ideas for me. He changed my life in many ways. I got introduced to many different friends through him. So yeah, that conference was amazing, but not for the reasons I expected going in.
How does it feel that knowing that you are the guiding light that Nita was for you back then to a lot of people on the internet?
It's a privilege, I think, and it's something I take seriously. And that's why in my first year, I think 6 months in after this conference, I realized I need more friends on these weird paths. I am a bit lonely. I don't have the support I have from my friends from the corporate world and business school friends and family. I didn't have it. I needed more love and appreciation, and set up these curiosity conversations. And part of the reason I did that was I was listening to podcasts and people were saying, you got to protect your time. Don't let anyone access your calendar. Charge for all your time. And I said, what if I did the opposite? So I just opened up my calendar every Wednesday and I talked to whoever booked a call with me.
What was that inclination to do the opposite?
I don't know. It just seems stupid. What the hell is the point of life? You just want to like monetize all your time and avoid people accessing you. It just seems silly. So yeah, I would talk to random people around the world. And before I had the platform I do now, I just took people seriously. And I listen to them, and I care about people on these unconventional paths. Why? It's sort of selfish, too. I need other stories to be inspired by, too. This is the thing people don't realize. Like, I'm on a weird path. I'm still trying to figure it out. I need people to help me think about my path, too. It's not like a them to me, and I'm just some guru. I don't think I put off guru vibes, nor do I want to do that. But yeah, it's a community thing. And we're inventing new paths for people in the future that need these.
You're guiding the light for people. You're like, even though you don't look at yourself as the guru and you shouldn't, you are a step ahead of some people on their own journey. And that's so exciting.
It's cool. I want there to be 100 books like mine.
There's going to be thousands.
Well, let's get to 100 first. There's not enough books written of people just saying, here is my recipe of remixing my path. Tim Ferriss's was amazing. Surprisingly, there aren't that many of these books written. Like Elizabeth Gilbert is very famous. She's written some of these books. There are books, but often people have this script. I need to be famous before I share my story. Amy McMillan, she wrote Reclaiming Control, the book that inspired my book. She wrote a 100-page book, and it was like, what? This is amazing. She has very different childhood than me and different lens on the world, but it was like, wow, this was so inspiring to read. It was 100 pages. She self-published it. She just put it out there, and it led to my book.
How do you know when you're ready to share your story?
I think people will tell you. I think, yeah, I mean, this is hard. I don't have any good advice for aiming at goals. I just sort of wait for the signals and wait for my intuition to guide me. So Amy wrote the book, and I said to her something out loud. I was interviewing her for this live session I did for people on my newsletter. And I said, Amy, I wish there were 100 books like this. And then I realized in that moment, shit, Paul, you have to write a book, right? So the seed was planted.
By yourself.
Yeah, that was summer 2020. People had said you should write a book. Your writing is good. I'd gotten feedback that said keep going. But yeah, by the end of that year, 2020 was crazy just because so many people were paying attention to my work for the first time because they were questioning their relationship with work. Pandemic changed so much. By the end of the year, so many people were saying, you have too much content. Where do I start? Do you have a book? Are you thinking of writing a book? And 3 or 4 people told me that. I started testing it out loud. I was living with one of my best friends, Johnny Miller, at the time in Mexico, and with a bunch of other friends at a house. And I was just walking around. Should I write a book, guys? Nobody laughed at me because these are really supportive friends. Angie, of course, was rooting me on. Yeah, of course. That's great. Johnny was like, yeah, I think that would actually be great. And so I wrote the draft and decided to write the book. I wrote an outline. I dumped all my essays into a Word doc. But yeah, I remember that day. It was really exciting.
What do you suggest for people to take the first steps when they're like, all right, they hear this. They're like, all right, I should write a book. Like, people have told me to write a book. Where do you go first?
So I tend to just jump into things without knowing what I'm doing. Part of that is I want to figure things out for myself so that I can then help other people do it. So one of my favorite things about writing the book is I now have this 10,000 word essay, which is blog to book and shows people how to do this. So because people ask me all the time now, how do I self-publish a book? And I just send them that. I'm kind of lazy too, so I just want to send people stuff. And I think if people have written consistently over a long period of time and want to write a book, just dump everything in a Word doc. Start organizing it by theme. Spend a month on this. Dump it in and just start writing, rewriting. You don't have to figure out the intro at the first. You don't have to have the big theme. And just see, is there something here? Is there something calling you? Just pay attention. This is the thing people don't do. They aim at wanting to write a book instead of seeing, is the book telling me it has to be written?
That's good. I've never thought about it like that before, but that's really powerful.
That's the only strategy I know how to do. I don't have this achievement impulse. I'm not good at it, actually. I've tried on having goals. They never motivate me. I forget about them, and they're just not exciting for me. So part of my journey was getting in touch with my intuition, creating space in my life. You've talked about taking retreats where you're off the grid. And in those moments, you do get back in touch with what really matters to you, what you're driven to do. And that's the only strategy I've had at getting things done.
Well, it's because like in this life, we are handed so much. In the society that I was raised in, it's like you're handed this. This is what you should value. This is what should be important to you. And every day it adds. These are the emails on your plate. These are the things that are important. But it's like, how often do we stop to actually question, is this important to me? Like, this is what somebody else says is important to me, but is it actually?
You started your podcast after you took a break.
Yes.
And that makes perfect sense to me. That is the same thing that happens over and over and over again. This is why I tell people sabbaticals are the key to life. Take 3 months in your adulthood, and you will likely change the course of your life and upgrade it, possibly.
It's because when you give space for nothingness, a lot comes out. Yeah. There's a lot there under the surface that is suppressed because maybe that's our true work. Maybe that's the true calling that we have to face. And that's difficult to do when we're not doing it and it seems like a mountain to climb. I remember listening to Rogan or watching Joe Rogan, listening to Tim Ferriss, and doing that in my procrastination time. It's like what you do when you're procrastinating might actually be the most important thing you should do. For you, it's like, what were you doing when you were procrastinating in your work, when you were working for McKinsey? What were the things that were going on that you were like, all right, like, I'm going to go to this thing?
Drinking, trying to change jobs constantly.
Yeah.
Trying to stay busy so I didn't have to think about it.
I want to help people get to a closer understanding of like what their true work or what their true calling should be. And one question you asked in your book was to ask your friends, when have you seen me at my best?
Yeah.
I think that's such a helpful question.
When have you seen me at my best?
When you're connecting with human beings and you're encouraging them and also bringing them together.
You're so quick at that. But this is the thing. That's not 100% known to me, what you just said. And often our closest friends have never had an opportunity to tell us these things.
So true.
And some people told me this in 2017 when I was doing this exercise for myself. And I was like, oh, wow. It's just nice to hear that sometimes too.
Totally.
Oftentimes the people closest to us are so comfortable with us that we never go deeper.
It's a good line.
And it can be useful to ask people occasionally, when have you seen me at my best? And that's probably the stuff you should follow. And oftentimes it's not surprising to you. It's like, oh yeah, I kind of know that. I just never thought about it or never thought other people saw that in me.
Yeah.
Nobody ever said, oh, your ability to climb the corporate ladder is your strength. And we know that, but that's the thing we're optimizing for in life. And we're so scared to walk away from that. Because here's the thing too. Like when I tell people to take a break, you will feel bad. People will judge you. People will look down on you. People will mock you. And you'll feel really shameful, but it might also be worth it. Right? And this is the cost. And I think this is the thing I'm trying to do, which takes these escape scripts and messages like Tim Ferriss, which is like, his is get more time, but also automate money, right? I'm saying, I don't know if you can get the money, or I don't know on which time scale you can do it. But if you find the work that matters to you, the real work of your life, it won't matter. Because you'll be so willing to fight for it and play a long game. Everything else, like, just is like a matter of time. Like, I have this idea that I think ambition is a matter of time once you've found the real work of your life. I was talking about David Perell about this. It's like he found work that lit him up, right? And he could have gone a lot slower and he would have been successful regardless. Maybe the form of what he creates is different, because of timing and opportunities. But once you've found it, you will be successful. And some people don't even want the monetary rewards, right? I've met many people doing work that matters to them that are not optimizing for that, right? The problem is you need friends that also see what you're showing up as and providing in the world.
When you spoke to David Perel and interviewed him, phenomenal. It's linked below because I enjoyed it tremendously and I highly recommend it. He said that he called his dad and he said, Dad,
Yeah.
I've got the worst plan for 2 years and the best for 10. And some part of me was just like, that's it. That I resonate. I relate to that. I feel that is so true. And that is exactly what I'm doing. And I'm like, like I felt seen in that moment more than I have in a long time listening to a podcast.
Yeah. If that's probably a second best title I could have done for my book. Worst plan for 2 years, best plan for 10.
That's amazing.
It's so good. If I ever I should do like a rite of passage version with that title. So yeah, and spotting this energy is kind of hard. So somebody said to me earlier this year, somebody to me made a comment to you about you before we had met in person. And they were like, I feel like that kid's like a little hustly. I was like, nope. There's a deeper game. When we had I could see it. And I have this idea on top of this too, that like hustle language is just because people haven't read enough poetry or literature to describe their journey. But I was like, no, he's playing a deeper game. Like once you see it, you need to be able to look for it. But it's hard to look for unless you've experienced yourself, right? And so sometimes you use hustle language, right? And but like as soon as you listen to your podcast, there's like you just ask beautiful questions. So I appreciate that so much. And like that's all that matters. And I know you're going to keep it going. You have way more fire than I do. Like, and that's where Dave Perel's phrase of hearts on fire has really stuck with me too. Because once you find that, once you know that exists, it's actually worth reorienting your entire life to find it. Because it is the most sustainable energy in the world. Better than oil, better than electric, better than solar, baby.
Well, better than nuclear.
I don't know. Nuclear is pretty rad. You know you can keep an airplane flying forever, theoretically, with nuclear?
I did not know that.
They tested some of them in World War II.
That's so cool. Well, the thing is about the hustle of me is that it is 100% part of me. In that I believe that the fuel for what I'm doing, the reason why I want to hustle so much is actually because I love the thing. And you're right. It takes nuance to...
But you're not hustling.
Exactly.
You're actually playing a deeper, slower game.
Yes.
You could be optimizing in different directions if your goal was money.
100%. 100%. But like, how did you know that? I guess because you spent time with it. And like, why is that not apparent? Because it just takes a long time to realize, or you have to really dive deep into it?
I'm fascinated with people's journeys, so I'm watching everyone.
Yeah.
I think you're like this too. I sort of see myself as like a creator fan. I love watching people's journeys, even my friends, fellow creators, things like that. And so I'm just paying attention, right? And I'm paying really close attention. Somebody sent me a comment about my book today. And he said, I feel like you have the most precise and profound language for describing your journey. Wow. Here's why. I call it the long, slow, stupid, fun way. I took the long way. I took the stupid way. I basically leaned away from anything that reeked of looking like a job or guaranteed financial payoff. And I just wanted to go slower. I wanted to do things on my own terms, and I didn't want to compromise. I worked 10 years in the corporate world. I had a job. I don't need another job. A lot of creators, entrepreneurs create jobs for themselves really quickly. And I'm like, why are you doing that? You have not created a job for yourself because you're not unnecessarily creating work you don't want to do.
I refuse to do it.
Right. So I'm just lazy and stubborn. I don't want to do work I don't want to do, and I don't want to work for a boss. So I don't create those constraints for myself. So long and slow, stupid, turning down the money, and I'm just optimizing for fun. I'm really just trying to enjoy the work I like. And I got an idea from Venkatesh Rao, which I put in my book, which is design for liking work.
Design for liking work. I just want to highlight that.
Yeah, designing for liking work. Design your life, right? Design your life with like your life first. But design for liking work is super powerful because the default is designed for security, safety, or employment. Right? And that doesn't guarantee you'll actually like what you do. Right? On my previous path, I kept having to change jobs every 18 months because I wanted to be energized and learning things. It's really hard after 18 months on a job to stay energized and keep learning new things.
How much do you think your health complications that you dealt with were a result of the work you were doing?
I don't know. A lot of people make those claims. I just don't know.
Yeah.
Probably some, though. I think if I had woken up earlier, I would have paid closer attention to my health. I was not super healthy. I didn't eat well growing up. I was super fussy. I ate a very shitty American diet, drank soda, exercised very minimally. So I think that just snuck up on me. But drinking a lot in college from 18 to 25. And then when I was 25, a lot of weird stuff started happening health-wise. So do I wish I had never started drinking or maybe quit right after I stopped college? Yeah, I think I would have paid closer attention to myself, but yeah.
Take me back to thinking about sharing all of the health journey when you were, I believe it was on Quora, and you sat on it for a while and you're like, I don't know if I should publish this. And then you do publish it. And then what happens?
Yeah. So I started feeling sick right after grad school, 2012. And yeah, I just graduated from MIT Business School. I was ready to like the ascent through my career. I was trying to talk myself into this very much still. I was never really wired for it. All my friends along the way would be like, oh yeah, your current path's obvious. But I was the last to find out. So graduated from school, my first week in my new consulting job, I start feeling sick and basically just never recovered from that. I just kept feeling worse and worse over months. Got diagnosed with Lyme disease and some other tick-borne infections, treated that, and probably was in some side effects from the treatment as well. It just took me a long time to recover. It's really hard, though. I got dumped before I started that job, too, and I was just like in a really confusing place. I felt really shitty about myself, and it's really hard when you're sick because people say, oh, you'll get better. It's like, you don't know, actually. It's like, maybe not. And so it was in a pretty dark place. And I think deciding to write online 6 months into that journey was very powerful for me. So I just shared it with close friends and family members. And I tried to have fun. I tried to channel optimism through the writing with all these ridiculous charts. And like I called it like the shittiness index, channeled some of my nerdy analytical bent into that and had fun with it. Also just honest about how crappy I felt. Got a lot of support and it felt good to write that. It felt very releasing to write that. So eventually I start recovering. It took me another year and a half to really recover. Started taking my health seriously. working with different doctors that really helped me. And I just had this idea when I was sick, I need to help people have optimism or hope, because nobody writes about recovering. There's all this writing in the chronic disease world online of just like, we're sick forever, here's how you cope. It's not optimistic. There needs to be more stories. So I knew I had to write something and put it out there. And I shared a draft with a friend. I worked on it for a year. I didn't publish it.
A year?
Yeah. I just sat. I would come back to it and then get better. I remember sharing it with a friend, and she gave me feedback, which was not helpful, which was something around like being politically correct. And it really hurt me. Yeah. It made me hide away from sharing it again for another 6 months, because she was just like, I feel like you're not being politically correct here. And I don't know, some usage. But yeah, and then Quora, I put it on Quora because Quora seemed safe for me. What's millions of strangers compared to people I actually know? So I put it out there, and it ended up getting, I think, 500,000 views.
Wow.
People from all over the world were leaving these comments. Oh my God, I needed to read this. It was mind blowing. And it was really cool. 100% positive compliments. And yeah, it was wild. And that gave me confidence to maybe share a little more and lean into that. This is 2014, 2015. And started sharing on Medium. And this creative spark, as I was healing from my illness, started to show up in the world. And it showed up in all these experiments, writing on the side, career coaching. We talked about it in the last podcast. We don't need to rehash this. Go back and listen to the back catalog, people. It's
115, baby. Episode 115, linked below.
But yeah, and that was a really powerful moment for me. But yeah, you only realize it looking back. Nothing seems consequential in the moment.
It didn't seem consequential that it was getting 100% positive feedback and 500,000 plus people saw it. That wasn't consequential to you?
It felt good, but I didn't see myself as a writer or taking any of the path I've taken now. I was showing up to an office in New York City at the time. It might have been Boston, and just going through the days and like spend all my time at work, like reading internet articles and reading and volunteering for this undergrad consulting group and things like that. But
that's what I mean by the procrastinating, spending time on the internet and writing. And it's like, you didn't even view that as part of your identity, even though that's what you're doing in the moments that you're in between time.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time at work just screwing around on the internet for most of my career. I did not work very many hours, even working for these impressive companies. I always had this orientation like, what the hell is everyone doing? I really can't figure it out still. My hunch is that people are so insecure about feeling or seeming like they're doing enough that they just create a lot of work for themselves or just constantly stay busy. People are so afraid to leave the office early because they care what people think of them. I would just walk out at 5. I was working at McKinsey, and I would walk out at 5. And people were sort of like, oh, that's Paul. He can get away with that. But I was just like, why don't people just get their stuff done and leave? And now, this was early on. My first job, we didn't even have cell phones in that job. So they couldn't track me and like keep sending me emails. And people were just doing it at the office. But yeah, people would just work, I don't know, 15, 20 more hours than me a week. But I never got the highest ratings at work or the highest raises, but I don't know, who cares?
And then how do you take that? Like, one thing that I want to highlight is that you sat on that piece for 6 months or a year, because there are people out there right now who have something worth sharing. They know it's worth sharing or believe it deeply in their heart, but they're not. One, what could you say to help get that person over the edge to actually share? And two, why do you think that is? Why are people not sharing what they know is part of them? Because this comes natural to me, right? Yeah. This is what I was born doing, just sharing the things that I found interesting.
Yeah, you were blogging at 14. That's
Blogging at
amazing.
12 about my Little League team. Like,
But I was doing the same too. I think
yeah.
so in high school, I had a website called Paul Says It Will.
Paul Says It Will. .com?
No, it was on Tripod or GeoCities. Do you remember those? I don't know. It might have been before your time.
I started with WordPress.
This is like 1998,
Yeah,
1999.
before me. I was 3 or 4.
Surprised you weren't online yet. But yeah, I had always done fun experiments like this. And yeah, there was a newscaster it was like Brian Says It Will. He would predict the weather.
Gotcha.
And I was like, I can do better than this guy. So I had weather forecasts, and during snow days, I would do a prediction, and I would rate myself against the weather forecaster on the news. And so all my friends would check my predictions before.
Hilarious.
But all I was doing was using AccuWeather instead of like the Weather Channel, because AccuWeather had better models. So I was beating the forecast, but all my friends in high school would always track it through like AIM. And yeah, it was kind of like a fun thing. So I always did all sorts of things like this growing up. But yeah, we got off track. I love rooting for people to start things. And I realize all they need is one cheerleader sometimes, but you need to be someone worth rooting for. This was the topic of my newsletter last week. Be someone people can root for. Put yourself in public. That is the most generous thing you can do. If you have a newsletter, sign up. You're somebody people can opt in to root for. Right? That is a generous act. Right? People are putting their articles out there, and I'm reading them, you're reading them, and they may have just started, but they may help us. Right? And they may be inspiring to us. Right? The creator of this space, Noah, shout out Noah, he's amazing, right? I just encouraged him to start his Substack because he has so many great ideas.
Yes.
And his first one was amazing. It was inspiring to me, and it gave me a new lens on a different idea from his unique brain and perspective.
Noah Heisman. We'll link him down below, his Substack.
Yeah.
It's great.
And yeah, I've inspired, I think, 3 or 4 people in the past week to start stuff. I did a session on newsletters in my community last week and was hammering home this point. Be someone people can root for. The most generous act in the world is putting yourself out there to let others be inspired by you. What if you're the missing piece to help unlock something in someone else? And if we do enough of this, we can unlock more aliveness in the world, right? So yeah, I think what holds people back is shame, because people will make fun of you. People still make fun of me. People I care about and that love me still make fun of me. People say, oh, you're not working. Paul's unemployed. Sure, I do work less than most people. And that does trigger some people. But yeah, people have said things to me, like in my family, like, oh, don't write about me. Like, you're going to say bad things about us. Like, oh, I don't want to. And it's like, I do try to write with care and not insult people, but yeah, it makes people very uncomfortable in a world that is coming out of this industrial mindset, which is that you need the correct permission or credentials to share. It's not true. Hasn't been true since you were born, and you figured that out early. Let it rip, baby. Share your story.
I love it. That is so important for people to hear. I loved how you talked about this idea with David Perel in his episode about the country as a corporation. I've never considered this before.
Yeah, that's David's idea.
Yeah.
And I think it's something I've been thinking about a lot too. I have this tangential idea, which is that we live in a wage-based society. This is Andre Gore's idea. It's a sociologist talking in the 1990s. And I think it's more relevant than ever because the opportunities and possibilities for leaving that path, the default path, are greater than ever. They've increased every year with the internet.
Yes.
And technology. My parents, starting work in the late 70s, early 80s, did not have these options. So what's the use in calling attention to the fact that we're trapped in this wage-based society? Andre Gore's idea is that membership in society is earned through formal employment. So formal employment through the right credentials, the right way, it's a certain way of orienting, right? So I guarantee people have said to you, oh, you don't have a job, you're unemployed. Yeah, because they're still in that frame and we're all raised in it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are in that frame, locked in a job, and are not realizing that that is their implicit assumption that is to be good in the world, you need to be employed.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful script that is underlying a lot of culture, right? I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's useful to pay attention to that. And I know many friends in the corporate world working full time who are aware of this and are able to get a little looser in their relationship with work and do it in a way I wasn't able to in full-time work, right? So you're not a bad person if you leave the employment world. This is something people need to hear, and they've never heard it in their lives or never thought that this is their implicit assumption about work.
What do you do if you're in the position of people close to you have that script and they're running it of job equals membership in society? And you don't know because you're taking the jump right now yourself.
Yeah.
So like, how do you tell that person kindly or just like explain to them that like I'm opting out of this because I think there is potential 10 years down the line for this to be something different? Like, how do you go about having that conversation with people close to you in your life? People you don't want to just push away from. Like, it's one thing if it's a friend, right? Like a friend who lives in a different place who you were friends with in high school. You could tell that person, dude, fuck off. But like, you can't really tell that person to somebody who you want in your life in the future. Maybe like a parent or a grandparent or a cousin, somebody a little bit closer.
It's very hard. It's something I really struggled with because when you're at the start of an uncertain journey, you don't know what you're doing and you don't know where you're headed. And people that are more in the frame of needing to have a plan want to know firmly where they stand in society are going to be triggered just by your existence. I've experienced this many times. And at first, what I did is tried to defend my path by attacking the default path. This was a mistake for my relationships, and it was a mistake for me because I wasn't actually against the default path. I just wanted to find my path. And I realized slowly over time that the best course of action is essentially just to share your feelings. Right? Like, stupid man wakes up to feelings in his mid-30s. It's like story as old as time, but that's what you need to do is like just share. Yeah, when people say, "Aren't you worried about not having an income?" It's like, yeah, it is pretty scary, and I know I'm giving up a lot, but I really feel that this matters and I'm onto something. I know you can't see. I'm going to succeed, but I just need your love and support. And people often respect that. It was very hard. It's been hard on me and my mother's relationship. I ran away. I think I hid a lot from her early on. I've gotten better at sharing the stuff. She reads my newsletter now, and my solution was to sort of run away and hide and distance myself from the details around what I was up to. And I've realized a lot of it is her fear too. She did not have a college degree. My dad didn't have a college degree. They had a lot of scarcity mindset of we can't lose this path, which was valid and true. And I don't have that. I have more options because of them and their investment in me and belief in me and their love and the financial security they did achieve. But yeah, you can't solve somebody else's insecurities though. Just because somebody else is scared of not having security doesn't mean you can convince them that you feel secure on your path.
That's beautiful. One thing that's really helped me is like telling that person, I'm not disrespecting you by not following the path that you think is right for me. Like a lot of people believe if they are on a path, that that path is following that path is a respect thing. It's like
Yeah.
if you are getting a job the normal way people normally do, if you do that, then you're respecting the parent or the elder or something like that. But when it's not disrespecting your mom, I'm not disrespecting, I'm not trying to disrespect you. I know it is disrespecting to you, but I'm not trying to do that, even though it seems that way to you. Like having that, saying that has been impactful for me.
Yeah, it's still very hard because people have their own fears, right? And their scripts. You can't rewrite other people's scripts. They need to rewrite them on their own time. And there's a deep script in our world that men should suffer at an office for a family. And that is what you do. And when you opt out of that, people can perceive that as, oh, you don't think you have to do that. It's just reality of the world. And so I really struggled early on with this because I was like attacking the default path. I was doing this until midway through my book.
Wow.
And I think I wrote myself into optimism.
Wow.
And resolved that tension. But I was attacking the former path because I was scared to go back. I think it was a defense mechanism. I was trying to light the bridges on fire, so I didn't go back. It's like right. It was like setting it up for future selves. Like, you're all in, buddy. Keep going.
No, I definitely sense that. Like a hatred of the path.
It was a hatred of my former self.
Hatred of your former self. When we were interviewing, a hatred of what the United States represented to you in that moment. And now it's like, it's so much lighter.
It wasn't a hatred of the U.S.
Thank you for correcting.
I think I was terrified.
Scared.
I was really scared of coming back to the U.S.
Because if I come back to the U.S., I might fall back into the old ways.
I just didn't know. Like, I felt like I had lost a lot of my friends from distancing myself and making my life small and getting to know myself again. I was really on an extended retreat abroad for 3 years.
Wow.
And yeah, I was scared I had lost my friends. I was scared, what will people think if I'm still like living this life and in the US and not taking responsibility? Am I actually going to be able to make money? I didn't know. And if I had to make more money, was I going to lose myself by pushing myself? I knew I could make money. I'm savvy enough, like I have enough business experience to figure stuff out. But could I make money without losing myself? And I didn't know. And this whole past year has been really scary for me. And like Angie was my biggest rock in this.
Your wife.
Yeah.
You made $250,000 last year. Was that difficult to write about or talk about? Was that easy because...
No, I've been writing about what I made for 5 years. Just nobody pays attention when you put out, I made 40 grand.
And then you put out, I made 250,000. It's like, like people are looking like, where the hell did this? And what's crazy about it is like, you haven't changed anything.
No.
That's the wild part.
I pushed a little harder. So when I came back to the U.S. in November 2021. And I was like, all right, I got to freelance. I got to really push into like corporate connections. I hadn't done like outreach for projects in 3 years. I only responded to stuff that came to me. And so I started reaching out. I landed a project working with my buddy's consulting firm. It was another confirmation of don't do these consulting projects. Do it on your own terms. I started ramping up, taking more serious my corporate training business. And I ended up building something I actually really like doing. So I had been prototyping that pretty slowly for the previous 2 years. So I leaned into that. the book revenue was like, what the hell? This is crazy. You can make a lot of money as a self-published author, like $6 a book, right? So do the math.
$6 a book times 12,000.
Yeah, it's about, I think for like 2022, I made like 35 to 40 grand. That's like booked in that 250 total. And
that was your total income basically for the previous years.
Yeah,
around
the previous year, 2021, I think I made 100 grand in revenue and 70 grand in after costs.
Right.
Profit, like business profit, and then after tax like 56, so like 4,800 a month. I'm not even gonna do the math, but yeah. And then this year is about, after taxes and expenses, is probably closer to like 11 something a month, which is about which is more than I earned in my last job, but it took me 6 years to get there. And I wasn't aiming at it. And I don't know what's going to happen this year. This year, I'm planning to take a few months off for the birth of my daughter and really just not prioritize anything. But like, things are still going. And it's like kind of crazy how all these things compound on the internet. And it's all downstream of my writing and bets I've made years ago.
Wild. What's been the impact of knowing that you're going to have a child like?
I sense there's a sort of magical pre-dad like income accelerator. I think that's helped me get very focused with my time and more efficient with my time. I was just kind of floating along for the 4 years after I quit my job, and that was intentional. I really just wanted to go slow and not commit to anything. Even now, though, I'm still spending most days as I want. Like, the internet's been off in my apartment yesterday and today, so I haven't really worked. But in just flopping around and, like, just wandering around, reading random books I have around the house, I'm aware again, I probably needed this just to, like, non-do for a week or so.
Reset.
Yeah, and it's I don't, what were we talking about?
The birth of your child.
Yeah. So I think there's a focused element of you need to take yourself seriously. And it's more income is great because then I don't have to worry about like providing things. But even with like parenting, like I think people get crazy about parenting just like they do with work.
Yes.
There's all these scripts I'm encountering. It's crazy. It's probably another book here, but I don't know if I want to wade into the parenting world.
Well, I want to see you wade into the parenting world. But, you know, it's interesting because we probably have all these scripts about, like, once you realize that people are running scripts about so many different parts of their life.
Yeah.
And for you, it started with work, I believe. But it's like people have relationship scripts. People have parenting scripts, people have gym scripts, people have meditation scripts. Like, people are running all these scripts for all the different facets of their life. I'm running a podcast script, right? In some respect of like, all right, a podcast is an hour long or 2 hours long and it's an interview type conversation. It's like, what happens when we flip it? What happens when we're like, well, what if we go a different route? Like, it could be just as magical, if not more, when you say to yourself, could I go a different route? Could I look at the script and do something different?
It's not even that. I just start from first principles. A Descript.
Which is a great podcast app. Shout out Descript.
Sponsored Danny Descript. Very good app.
I'm down. I'm down for a sponsorship.
But yeah, I really just start from the raw information. I think I've just always been like this too. I'm always looking for the hacks or the different path in. And yeah, a lot of people just don't think this way. They look at what other people are doing and then do that. Like, so with having a kid, it's like, okay, what is the aim here? Right? It's like home with love, hopefully being an inspiring role model, health, Like, that's pretty much it in the first year. Whereas other people project these scripts like, are you thinking about college? It's like, no, I don't know. I don't know what my daughter wants to do. Like, where do they get a say in this, right? But like, will I save for an education fund? Probably. That just seems like a practical thing to do. But like, I'm not going to reorient my entire life around aiming at this goal in the future. Right? A lot of people just escalate the scripts up and up and up and up. Right? So a big script for people is I want to pay for my kid's school. Now, if that is a reason you are actually suffering at a job in a way that is zapping your energy and putting you away from your kids, that seems silly to me. That's not something I want to do. Right? So it's like, what is this for? That's Seth Godin's question, right? What is this for? Right? And just starting with this, what is this for? And like with me and Angie, it's just like always getting back to what do we really care about? Love, creativity, play, health. Like, start from those principles and then ask, how do we make things work? Like, but people have so many scripts. It's like, have you set up your child's nursery yet? We live in a 2-bedroom apartment. We don't have a nursery, but it is legal to do this. You don't have to have a nursery.
What's a nursery? Like,
it's like a painted, perfect setup room and stuff for kids. But like, the kid is in your room for the first 3 months anyway. Right? So people have these separate rooms set up for like the future. It's like, I don't know, just live in the present and make moves when it's necessary. Also, I sense there'll be so much wisdom by just looking at my daughter and her sort of just telling me what to do. Not in words, but, oh, I know what to do. Just trusting that.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about all of this.
We'll find out soon enough.
Check in 3 months, but it's been confirmed, these impulses, by other parents that have inspired me too.
Follow-up episode next year to discuss that. You're somebody who I find is just playing with life and is playing creatively with life and is just like, all right, like what's fun that I can explore today? And the outburst of that is that everything you do is creativity in motion, right? Like, we had this great end of the year recap for some creators in Austin, and that was awesome. And it was just like, that's just like a creative impulse that just comes about from you just living life and being who you are. And I think there's a certain art to doing that. Is there anything that comes to mind for a reason why you are that way?
So I think I always had that growing up, but I lost it.
Yeah.
And I had a powerful experience in Mexico in the end of 2020 with my friend Johnny Miller, who is just one of the wisest humans in terms of getting in touch with like his intuition and all these things. He led a breathwork session, which is now like crushing it with this course, Nervous System Mastery, which I think is going to just be huge because he's just a brilliant human. He led a breathwork session. This was his first like in-person one. I think he had done some others, but this is the first group one in Mexico. And I had this very just powerful, transformative experience where a lot of people go through and like process trauma and deal with things. And it's a powerful psychotechnology. Like, I think it's might even be better than psychedelics and stuff for a lot of people, which I've never tried. But I had this overwhelming sense of joy, just laughing hysterically, uncontrolled, and crying, and just so happy. And my wife was laughing at me because she's like, you're just always happy. But it was just like, I don't think I realized it at the time, but it was permission to play again for me. And I really started leaning into that again. In my first experience, we went back to Taiwan for 2021 when I wrote the book. The book was really a release of that again too. And I was at this night market and they have all these games and stuff you can play. And my friend won a yo-yo and I was like really excited. I was like, oh, that's so cool. I loved yo-yo when I was a kid. And I was like, all right, I'm going to buy a yo-yo and get back into yo-yoing. And it was so fun. It was delightful. and I started learning yo-yo and learning all these tricks, and I bought these yo-yos and got into it. And where I'm going with this is I started to realize I need to go from idea to action as quick as possible when I'm having these exciting, interesting, fun ideas. So like setting up that reflection lunch, it was an idea to action in, I think, like 10 minutes.
Wow.
Just like texted someone is like, would you be down for this?
And compare that to the 6 months or a year of that blog post.
Exactly. Directly connected, which is like we have these thoughts all the time as humans, and just trusting them is right and true, and following them. So this past year, I think my success has really been aligned with following this. And I moved to Austin, and I saw a DJ thing. And I'm like, I've wanted to DJ my whole life. There's this DJ studio right in front of my apartment. They're offering lessons. And I think it took me like a week to sign up, but I was like, I need to do lessons. So I leaned into that. I just DJ'd a workshop here, or DJ'd the community workout at this gym we're doing the podcast studio at. Shout out to Squatch Fitness. But I just did my first live event with like 100 people. It was so cool. And yeah, I taught myself design. I hired a coach, Nate Cadlack, who runs this course online called Approachable Design, and got him to mentor me and coach me. And I helped him build out an offering he did for people. And I worked with Mike Newton in Austin, and he taught me marketing and thinking strategy and applying all these things. So I've just been trying to I've developed this muscle of like taking action on things and learning things super fast. You can actually learn things super fast if you get the right mentor or coach, the right equipment, and you take action on it as fast as possible. Right? And podcasting can work like that too. Just buy an expensive mic because it will escalate your ambition. Right? And then this past month, I've been cooking every day. So I've been learning how to cook. I found this guy, Miles Snyder, which has this great, he's in Austin as well. He has this great online cooking channel. And I met with him, and he was like, cooking is easy. Just ignore all the jargon and just dive into it and have fun. And it was like, oh my God, such an unlock for me. And I immediately took action, bought a couple pans he told me, bought the right book, and like got super into it.
You were running all these scripts with cooking.
Yeah, I think so. And cooking is such a weird thing. I just surprised myself again. Because for years, I'm like, I don't like cooking. I can't cook. I kept trying to get into it by like finding recipes and getting into it. But no, I had the wrong entry point. You got to find the right entry point. And for me, I found you need to find somebody else to be excited about it.
Interesting.
So like the DJ, he loved it. He loved teaching it, and he was obsessed about the fundamentals. Miles, he loves it. He thinks cooking can be easy. He thinks normal people can learn it, and he gave me a way in. Mike Newton taught me marketing, taught me a way in. Nate Cadlack is delighted by design, thinks it can be fun and easy, taught me a way in. And like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Because a lot of the times what we're doing when we're not doing something is we think it's too difficult in our head or it's not for us. But having that person in your life where you could be like, oh, that person did it and he said it's easy, so I could do it too.
Working out is another one.
Yes.
Pavel Tsutsouline. I listened to him on Tim Ferriss's podcast, and he was like, just do kettlebells every day. Super fun. He's like in a Russian accent. I don't know what accent I just did right there.
It's okay.
Yeah, and this was when I was recovering from my health stuff. I just went to the gym and did kettlebells for 5 minutes every day. I was like, this is crazy. But then I started like getting stronger and feeling better. I was like, this is crazy. So I've always been like questioning the default scripts, right? And I still do this. If you watch me work out at the gym, I work out for like 15 minutes, some days, 5 days sometimes. Because my whole game is just go to the gym most days and do what you like. You don't like, and I've gotten in great shape that way.
Listen, if it works for you, that's amazing. But, it's like you brought up a really important point before about the ideas in your head are getting quicker into reality. And I think it's worth harping on and noting because it's exactly what I found from this podcast as well. It's like if you could take your ideas and bring them forth to the world, great things can happen. And if you could do that quickly or quicker than you could a year ago, the results are going to be faster as well. And the results are going to be more in line with what you actually believe. And I think writing is probably the same way. You're literally taking your thoughts and making them a reality.
Yeah, for sure. And I've always been good at that with writing, at least in the past few years. And I think there's another element of that, especially if you're starting, is sometimes things just won't work out. I launched a lot of stuff that didn't work out, didn't get a following, didn't get anyone signing up, and I just quietly shut it down. People always overlook that stuff. I was actually rereading Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek recently. Nobody knows what he did before 4-Hour Workweek. He ran a supplements company. He opened a gym in Taiwan and got shut down by the Taiwanese mafia. He wrote a book called How to Crush It in the Ivy League. He had a speed reading course, and he did all these things. He competed in some competition, like Taiwanese push hand. No, that was Joshua Waitskin. But yeah, he competed in some like kickboxing tournament, all these things. So this is like another key is just try a bunch of stuff. You'll just learn things. The world is so crazy now, and there's so many opportunities. You just try stuff, and eventually you figure something out. But if you commit to one career path in the world, one career path in your whole adulthood, you're probably not going to learn much.
That is absolutely correct. And it's crazy how it's like the more you dive into something, the more things there are to explore. It's like, all right, you dive into writing. All right, now there's design that I want to learn. Now there's working out. Now there's this thing. And so it all comes about because you chose one thing in the beginning, or chose like, all right, I'm going to go and explore with something specific. And then it led to so many different paths.
Yeah, and especially if you're wired to tinker and try things out. I love figuring things out. So this creator path is awesome for me. So I can spend hours teaching myself video editing, audio editing, figuring out how to make like TikToks and things like that. This is fun for me to figure out. I do a lot of those things, and I try it, and I either decide to quit or scale up, or maybe I'll outsource it, which I've gotten smarter about as I've gotten some financial resources. But yeah, that's what makes this path fun for me. So if you have that spirit and you're in a job, you should probably get the hell out of there, because being on a path like ours is probably way more fun for you.
How do you figure out when to quit things?
I don't know. I think we know before we take action. And it's really about the awareness of getting in touch with that. It's always going to feel scary. Some people are way better at this than others. It took me a long time. Probably should have left years before I did. Seemed pretty easy for you.
Well, I meant more so like, how do you quit like doing TikTok? Like, you don't like doing TikTok anymore? Like, how do you come to that conclusion?
So I was inspired by Nat Eliason's recent post, and he's doing all these book reviews. I was like, that could be fun to do. And he provided a different way of thinking about it, which excited me. I was like, okay, I'm going to do what he's saying for a week or two, and then just see how I feel. That's it. Is
there any prescription that people should think about of like, all right, I'm not finding joy from this, or this isn't working? Like, we just know.
Ship, quit, and learn.
Ship, quit, learn.
The goal of launching a podcast is not to have a famous podcast. The goal of launching a podcast is to figure out what to do next.
Yes.
This is any creative experiment. Just time bound it. This is Tim Ferriss's idea.
Yes.
Do 5 and figure out what the experience of doing the 5 tells you.
Yes.
Either keep going, quit, scale it up, whatever. But changes information.
Because what you think in your head it's going to be like is not what it actually is in reality.
At first, a podcast is just a delightful way to meet people and feel connected and give the gift of conversation to someone. That's all you can hope for at the beginning, because you're not going to have followers unless you already have an audience. I've even seen this guy Zuby online. He has 1 million followers. I think he launched a podcast, and at the beginning, his followers are very low. It ramped up pretty quick because he has a big following, but you have to like it, even if you have a big audience, right? And most people quit podcasts.
And that's good. because it's like, all right, this isn't for me. I found out that this isn't for me. That's why it's good, because it's like you shouldn't do something that you're actively not liking. That the point of a podcast and having it is to like podcasting.
Yeah.
The
Designed for liking work.
Exactly.
That's why I know you're going to keep going.
I actually like it.
Yeah, but that's it. That's all that matters. And we overcomplicate these things with how do you grow a podcast? How do you get a following? How do you get an audience? It doesn't matter. Just keep going. Like the law of the internet is if you just keep going, you will win. Will you win money? I don't know. But you will win life and unexpected serendipity and all sorts of rewards that you can't predict.
You said it better than I possibly could, but I'd love to talk about this quote. If the culture doesn't work, don't buy it. Create your own.
That's Maury Schwartz.
I know. Excuse me. That's Maury Schwartz quote, but you highlighted it and you wrote it.
Yeah.
You re-highlighted it, and I'm re-highlighting it again because if the culture doesn't work, don't buy it. Create your own. That's what we are both doing in our own way.
Yeah, this is Maury Schwartz. Many people might have heard about Tuesdays with Maury. If they haven't read the book, it makes me cry every time because it's a man who dared to live a life on his terms all the way to the end. Now, he had the great cover of a default path in academia, but he was a weirdo. And there used to be a lot more weirdos in academia before it turned into bureaucratic hell. But yeah, he just kept saying these things with such like, well, here's how I lived life. And he's telling this to Mitch Albom in the final year of his life, who turned around his life too, which is really why that book is so powerful. Mitch Albom transformed his life through the process of writing that book. Right? And Mitch is just saying, well, you don't have to follow these default scripts. Just do what makes you happy. And it felt so simple, but it was so powerful reading that. And I actually had this huge release in writing the same thing in my book. Like, I just think it's worth rooting for people to live the lives they're capable of. And I think that is worthwhile. And I think it matters. And writing that actually made me cry. Like, as I wrote that, I know exactly where I was. I was in Kending in Taiwan, in the south, near the beach. And I was writing it on a rainy day. And yeah, and I was so frustrated. I was like, Angie, I can't figure this intro. I don't know what it is. She's like, she knows I need to go for a walk. She's like, go for a walk. You always figure things out on walks. But so we weren't in a super walkable area. So I just went for a ride on the scooter. And I just rode. And like it just came to me in like a flood of tears. Like I pulled over on the side and I'm just like crying. Like the side of the road, this busy street in Taiwan. And it just like flooded out of me. I opened up my phone. I'm like, I wrote the intro. It was crazy. I came back and I tell Angie, I'm like, I found it. So crazy. And it was just saying these things. You're allowed to say what you care about and you think matters. Even if for years you thought it was shameful to say these things or you thought people might make fun of you. And this is, I think, what has made the book resonate is I just said these things. I just did the same thing that was in Tuesdays with Maury. You can just say what matters to you. I think it matters that people live the lives they're capable of. That's it.
I'm so proud of you, man.
Thank you.
Like, I'm so proud of you for having the courage to explore some of these ideas, for having the courage to write them, to share them, to be yourself. And that's hard to do in a world that you felt as if didn't accept you or that you were born into but you weren't a part of. It's very difficult to go your own way, to have and follow a path that's slightly different. And I admire your courage and I admire your ability to do what you do. Like, it's really remarkable.
Well, and I think I try to write about this too. I had all these other floating ideas with these defense mechanisms of fully sharing what was in my heart because I was scared what will people make fun will people make fun of you? You shouldn't say this because you have these advantages. Right? You're wasting your talent. You could be doing more in the corporate world. You could still be earning good money. You're a disappointment to your parents. And it's like, those are just scripts in my head. I was just scared to live my life. And if I can just let it rip, like I can root for other people to let it rip too. So that's like this past year. And dude, Austin has been so great for me.
Why?
Because people don't laugh at me. The people weren't laughing at me before, but I just feel more comfortable here. It's like there's more freedom to be a weirdo here. And I know for sure a lot of the people I'm hanging out with are on similar journeys. So it's like we can all laugh about how ridiculous our journeys are, right? When we meet up with a bunch of other people who are creating, we all have the same like insecurities and fears and things we're struggling with, right? And we don't, like, the starting point is like we're already doing these weird things. We don't have to like, it's the same thing I felt when I met people like Nita and Stephen Worley at the beginning and Kei. It's like, oh, we can be uncomfortable together because it's a forced vulnerability when you're on an unconventional path. By default, you feel weird because you're in tension with society. And even people on paths like ours who might be super successful on the outside, look like they have these books, they're succeeding, they still don't have as much support as you'd think.
Well, you've got my support, Paul. You know that. But I will continue to tell you and remind you of that often. And 12,000 copies of your book sold today, and I truly believe millions by a decade.
Millions.
I truly believe that. I know it sounds silly to you, you're laughing, but I truly believe that. It should be read by millions, and I think more and more people over the next decade or two will open up to this idea and feel uncomfortable with it, and your book will be the perfect resource for them to check out. So go read The Pathless Path by Paul Millerd. That's my challenge. I end these podcasts with challenges for people because I think a challenge points to the place I want people to direct themselves to. Read The Pathless Path or gift it to a friend. I've never made that the challenge for this podcast, but it is that important, and it's linked below. But I'd love to ask you for a challenge to end the podcast. What is a challenge that comes to mind from everything we've spoke about or things we haven't covered for the action people should take for the next step as they go about their business?
The easiest way to transform your life is to take a walk without a destination. A 2-hour walk, no destination, no plan. Don't check your phone, just wander and start to trust your intuition and see where your body's telling you to go. This is something so few people have done in the world and is often the first way people can actually change their relationship to work. So people ask me, how do I change my job? So I have no idea, but start there and then just see what comes next. And it's really a metaphor for life. And if that doesn't transform you in some way, I don't know what will.
You did a walk with, I think you went 12 hours without a phone, or 12-hour walk it's called.
Yeah.
That, I think Sky King, shout out Sky, he did that as well. What'd you do? How did you go about doing a 12-hour walk without your phone or anything?
So it's a guy, Colin O'Brady. He went on a 12-hour, he was doing 12-hour days across Antarctica. A little tougher. He broke the record, but he talked about how he found this sort of mystical experience of being in touch with himself and hyper present. And his challenge is similar to my walk. My walk's the easy version of that. But yeah, 12-hour walk could be if you want something more advanced. Just go for 12 hours and walk. No rules. Just wander.
The rule is no phone, right? Or no connection? Or you do bring a phone?
Use your phone. You put it in airplane mode. The app actually lets you see a map, which is useful if you don't know where you are and need to find food.
Smart.
But yeah, don't talk to anyone. no journaling, just wander. And it was great. It was a beautiful experience. I've done a lot of walking and wandering. That's been vital. My biggest hack for writing is just to wander.
Well, it's like that's another example of you just playing with life and then creating something as a result of that. You're just walking. That's what you do, just walking around. And then with the output of that naturally is something in the world. It's pretty remarkable. Paul Millard, you're a legend. Follow this man at P
underscore Millard.
P_Millard. I should know it
On
since
Twitter,
we've replied so many times to each other. P_Millard. Anything else?
That's it.
To send people, where else should we send people? Buy the book?
Substack, boundless.substack.com. I write there most weeks. Not every week, but most weeks.
Cool. Substack linked below. Twitter linked below. Book linked below. Go check it out. If you're not convinced, I don't know what to tell you. But I appreciate you so much, Paul.
Same here, Danny. Keep going.
You as well.